Want to build your very first SwiftUI app? In this tutorial, we'll use Google Books API with MVVM and Async Await to create a real iOS app, step by step, perfect for beginners. So this is the app we'll create. It enables the user to search the books on Google Books API. So if I type in, for example, Swift, if I type in SwiftUI, it will retrieve all the books that contain SwiftUI with the thumbnail. And then if I click on one of the books, it will display the book image in full and the name of the book and the author's details. So this is the app that we'll be creating using MVVM, Async Await and Google Books API. Don't forget to subscribe for more Swift and SwiftUI tutorials. The first thing we need to do within our SwiftUI project is to create our models. So we need to create a new folder. Create your new folder, hold down the Control key, right click on the mouse and click on New Group. This folder will be used to store our models, so we call the folder or name the folder models. And then within our models folder, we need to create a new Swift file. Name the file books. So these are the data structures that will represent the books and how we decode them from Google Books API. So what we need to do now is to create our structs, book info, which is identifiable since each book will have an ID. Let ID equals UUID. Let title equal string. Let the author, which is an array of string. Reason why we're using an array of string for author, because a book could be created by more than one author. Let thumbnail string, which is the URL for the book cover. The next struct we need to create is for Google Books response, which is codable. And the purpose of using Google Books response, it represents the top level JSON response from Google Books API. Let items, which will be an array of book items, we create the book item struct afterwards. Let total items, which is int, and that will include the total number of results for the search criteria. So if we type in Swift or SwiftUI, if it returns, for example, 3 books, that would be the total results for the search criteria, which would be a count of 3. The next struct we need to create is our book item, which is codable. Which is or has a reference object variable or data type variable of volume info, which is volume info. Volume info struct doesn't exist at the moment, so we need to create that now. Struct volume info codable. Let title string. Let author string. The authors can also be optional. Let image links. Image link doesn't exist at the moment, so we need to create a new struct called image link. Okay, we create that struct within the volume info struct. Struct image links codable. Let small thumbnail string optional, and that will include the small book cover image URL. Let thumbnail string, which is optional, which will include the large book cover image URL. On lines 18, that should be book item and not book items. Now let's compile the project. The next file we need to create is our book API service file, which is a class. And the purpose of that class is to enable Google's Books API to communicate with the service and to retrieve the books. So the first thing we need to do is to create a new folder. So this folder will be a data layer or data service folder, or the API. Let's just call it API layer. But let's just call it the API. And within the API folder, we will have a file called book API service, which is a Swift file. Book API service. So we need to import observation, import SwiftUI, and then create our class which is book API service. we have to create a singleton static let shared book API service, create a new instance using the singleton, which is a shared singleton instance so we can access the service anywhere within our app. We also need to implement our default init, our default constructor, and the purpose of creating our private init is to prevent others from creating new instances of the singleton. The next thing we need to do is to create our function to fetch the books from the API, from the Google Books API. So the name of this function will be called fetch book info, which will accept a title, which is string, and a start index of 0, and we'll throw async throws if there's an error, and return an array of book info objects. And then int. And this method can be also be used for pagination as well. The next thing we need to do is to encode the search term so that it can be safely used inside the URL. So to do that, I think there's an error on line 18. I've forgotten the open bracket. So we need to take our encoded URL, encoded title equals title dot add percent encoding, which is the second one, and then we set URL query allowed. So what that does, if we have a search term, for example, such as Star Wars, then it will make sure that there's a percentage sign or percentage symbol and 20. So that the actual keyword is valid within the URL. Let URL equals URL string HTTPS www.googleapis.com books v1, and then the volume for the volumes question mark, Q, and then we include our encoded title, that will also include the start index, where paging should start. Equals and the start index ampersand max result. So that's the maximum result that it will return, which is 10. Else, if the URL is invalid, we will throw an error, URL error, which is bad URL. The next thing we need to do is to perform the network request. The underscore that represents response, so if you want to, we could have a response here to see the actual JSON payload on the console. But we're not doing that in this tutorial, so we'll just ignore the response. Equals try, await, URL session, shared data from URL. So when this function has been executed, it will display these results, which would be retrieved by the view model and then displayed on the view. So the next thing we need to do is to decode the actual JSON payload that's coming from Google API Books, Google Books API. JSON decoder decode Google Books response.self from data. So what that will do, it will decode the JSON into our Swift structs that we created earlier, which are, they're all in our model. These are the Swift structs that we created. The next thing we need to do is to convert the API response into an array of book info objects. So we need to type in let books book info with response for items, question mark, map item in, let raw sum equals, so this will get the raw thumbnail, item dot volume, volume info dot image link dot thumbnail. So if it's nil, then we will attempt to get the item dot volume info dot image link dot small thumbnail. Else, it's just nil, we just get nothing, blank. And then the next thing we need to do is to return our book info object, return book info, which will include our title, item, volume, info, title, and also our item, volume, info, authors. If it cannot return that, if it cannot return, if it cannot retrieve that, then we will just include unknown as the report for the authors. And something else I've got to do, we need to include the following: let https bum equals raw bum dot replace or replacing occurrences of http with https. So what that will do, it will fix Google's URL. They often start with HTTP, which iOS blocks, so it will be changed to HTTPS. And then what else do we need to do? Let me compile it. Expected in body. Let me bring this out. Sync rows. The bracket on lines 18 after book info, it should be deleted. Let's compile it again. Sync rows. It should be throws with an S at the end. Just compiling at the moment. Then missed out guard. Guard. Instead of increasing the time of the video, see if I can fix it offline. The issue has now been fixed. There are a few problems with the structs and variable names. For example, volume info was spelled incorrectly. So this is how it should be. And also the closing bracket was missing here on line 21. And we needed to return the books and the response for total items as a tuple as seen here. This is what this symbolizes. We're returning a tuple. In next week's tutorial, we will implement the book SKU model. Don't forget to subscribe for more Swift and SwiftUI tutorials.